Assignment 5, let's preview. The first question says, would you expect a positive, negative, or zero correlation between each of the following pairs of variables? So here, since we're previewing, we're just going to look at this and not really answer the questions. And we see that there is no data, so we're just gauging when we would assume a positive, negative, or a zero correlation. So if you take a look at heights of mothers and heights of daughters, what kind of a relationship is there? Well, we know that there's a relationship. So would you expect a positive, negative, or zero correlation? To that question, we know that we can rule out the zero correlation because there is a relationship. Now, would it be positive or negative? So you want to think about it. Do the heights between mothers and daughters go up together and down together? Or as one goes up, does the other go down? How about age and reaction time in the adult population? So age, assuming that it's for adults 18 and over, right? And reaction time would be how much time it takes for you to react. So this one, you got to kind of think about this, right? So as age goes up, what happens to the reaction time? Now, if you think that as people age, we kind of tend to slow down, that would mean that we need more reaction time. So based on that, see if you can guess or estimate a positive or negative relationship. How about natural gas usage and prevailing outside temperature? Now, I want you to imagine a very cold winter night in New York, right? Because that was the setting when I wrote this one up in grad school. So what happens with natural gas usage with the temperature, right? That's going down and it's getting really cold, snow is up to 3 feet. What happens to our gas usage? Does it go up or down? Right? Based on that, you can kind of predict whether there would be a positive or negative relationship. And reading skill and shoe size in the population of individuals over 18 years old. So in the adult population then, is there a relationship between reading skills and shoe size? In question 2, it says, a researcher hypothesized that there is a relationship between self-esteem and social responsibility, which increases with age. The researcher gave self-esteem and social responsibility inventories to 2 sets of people, a group of 10 high school students and 10 adults. The data collected are given below, SE for self-esteem and SR for social responsibility. So we have some data for high school students and some data for adults. Question A says, calculate the correlation for adults given the values below. It says to assume that self-esteem is the X variable and social responsibility is the Y variable. Right? Now here in this question, all of the totals are given. And since this is for adults and also for high school students, there are 10 cases in each. We know that N is 10. So in this question, since all the totals are given, it's a matter of plugging in these numbers into the formula. So see if you can plug in the numbers and calculate and come up with the correlation between self-esteem and social responsibility for adults. In question B, it says to calculate the correlation between SE and SR for high school students. Now here they give you no totals. You know you have 10 cases and you have the raw data. So you want to create a table that you saw earlier in looking at adding all the totals for height and self-esteem, that example. So you want to create SE, the SE column, that's your X variable. And then you have your SR, and that's your Y variable. And you also want to have the XY column. You have your X squared column. And you have your Y squared column. And you want the totals at the very bottom, right? And you want to be able to use those totals, right, for the formula. So once you have the totals, then it's plugging in, just like question A, and calculating. So that will tell us what the correlation is between self-esteem and social responsibility for high school students. And then based on those correlations, then we can answer the question in C. It says, using the results for A and B, decide whether the results provide any support for the researcher's hypothesis. Now, when we go back to the prompt here for question 2, the researcher hypothesized, right, that there's a relationship between self-esteem and social responsibility. So that's part 1 of the hypothesis. And then it says that it increases with age. So that's the second part of the hypothesis. So based on the correlations that we get for adults and for high school students in questions A and B, then we can decide whether our correlation for each group supports that hypothesis. And here in question D says, based on these results, the researcher concluded that in order to increase social responsibility among high school students, self-esteem enhancement programs should be implemented in all schools. Is this conclusion valid? So this statement should be based on the correlation between self-esteem and social responsibility being correlated, which means that they're related. Now, remember that correlation does not mean causation. Right? So just because two things are related does not mean that one causes the other. If anything, maybe self-esteem may cause one to be socially more responsible. Or it may be that you are socially responsible, and that tends to contribute to a high level of self-esteem. So you don't know if A causes Y or Y causes X. At this point, because we just know that these two things are related. Now, having said that, this statement seems to assume a causal relationship. If you look at the conclusion more closely, it says that in order to enhance the high school student self-esteem, we need to have this enhancement program in place, right, in order to increase social responsibility, right? So therefore, we need to implement, right? We assume that if we increase one's self-esteem, that will also increase social responsibility, right? So that assumes a causal relationship, and therefore, I would say that this conclusion is invalid. And then in question E, it says, draw a scatter plot of social responsibility against self-esteem for the high school students. So it's similar to the scatter plot that you saw between height and self-esteem in an earlier example. So a scatter plot would have the X variable, in this case it's self-esteem, and then the Y variable, which is the SR. Where two numbers meet, you would want to create a dot. So since there are 10 cases, you would have 10 dots. So see if you can draw the scatter plot and look for some kind of pattern.